we read through the article and understood some of it. So the Tridentine right, was not
Was the only thing
abrogated.
ever called the Roman Rite. Because you
Right,
didn't
was the
have a Roman
hmm
Rite declared until Council of Trent. Sorry, go ahead.
right. But it wasn't abrogated by Vatican II in the new missal, the new mass.
That's what Benedict is claiming.
Right, that's what Benedict is claiming. But Vatican II called for a literal new rite. Huh. So who's right on this? No one.
It doesn't even you see, and that's the problem with Summorum Pontificum now. If the Pope is contradicting himself in his own freaking document, then he's not even the chain of custody and interpreting the Second Vatican Council is. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Ah, that is some funny shit.
So
That
Jay
is.
Dyer is like on complete. He's on some side quest. Yeah, everybody's on a fucking side quest at this point. You get what I mean? This is the fucking real problem. If you're, you get what I'm saying?
Oh. That is a very good. I'm gonna snap. Wait, isn't this like an argument that Sedes make?
No, this is the again. This is the arguments that the SSPX is making.
Right, the SPX makes, right? So, okay,
Their
okay.
way
So,
around this is to say, no, the Vatican II documents are in error for even trying to make a new rite in the first place. That's their argument. But if I'm a
oh.
Catholic in good standing and I'm trying to follow the magisterium, then I have to take prima facie the Vatican II documents as valid. You see what I mean? As
Ugh.
uh,
Oh,
without
so
error.
it turns
Yeah.
you into an SSPX, bro. Okay, I see. I see. Wow, that's a
Ugh.
beautiful argument. Oh shit. I mean, listen, this is like beyond Peter Diamond level argumentation here. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because Peter Diamond, like, he'll argue, um, well, what about the papal dogmas contradicting each other? Which is a good argument. That is a good argument. Like, for example,
Well, with JP
um,
too, but go ahead, sir.
yeah, for example, if like Vatican II, right? It states in the Magentium, right? I believe that inter-religious marriages are fine, but literally, just a few years earlier, a few hundred years earlier, there was a dogmatic decree. It was by Pope Pius the 11th or 12th. I think it was the 11th, or it was either the 11th or the 12th. Published a dogma, a dogmatic text, declaring that interreligious marriages are false and they're heretical. Um, but wow, this is a way better argument than like Peter Diamond level argument. Holy cow, that's a that's interesting. That is interesting. The SSPX is way too smart, and there's no I can't even speak of this. This is so interesting. It's such a good argument. It's so simple. It's such a simple argument. I understand what they're saying. Vatican II is false because they wouldn't have been calling for a new rite. It would be reforming and abrogating the current one.
Right. But they never did that.
That. But they never did that. They just called a new rite.
Yeah, so they're literally not doing the Roman Rite. The Novus Ordo is literally its own thing.
So what if like a Catholic were to admit that the
Lex
Novus Ordo
Orandi,
is
Lex
it?
Credendi, right?
What if they were to admit it's its own thing?
They could. I think that's what Pope Francis is trying to do with Traditionis Custodes. So he's basically what he did was he abrogated Summorum Pontificum. That's like literally the last lines of Traditionis Custodes.
Oh, see, the Pope can just abrogate whenever he wants because it doesn't benefit him. That is some funny shit. So the only way to get out of it is by saying that it just is a new right.
It seems that way, but that's the thing. If you want to maintain that, then now you have a case where the popes aren't able to interpret the council correctly.
Oh yeah, because Pope Benedict. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, you
it's
got it
already
right.
up.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh, I see what you're saying now.
So
They
yeah,
contradict each other. How do they have contradictory positions on a fucking council? What
yeah,
the heck? That is a beautiful argument. That is a
yep.
very good argument. Where's the papal clarifications now when you need them, bro?
So
Dude.
what Francis tried to do with Traditionis Custodes is now he's trying to. So there's another like way of looking at it, which that's the direction that I think they're going to try to steer the boat, which is they're just going to try to say, oh, well, at the end of the day, it is a reform of the old liturgy, for pastoral reasons. Pope Benedict put it that way just to say that, at the time, there are the same forms. Like, if you look back when the Tridentine Rite was instituted, it took 200 years for everybody to, adjust to the new rite in form, right? But the problem is prior to the Tridentine Rite, there was no Roman Rite. Am I making sense?
Yes.
The only Roman rite that was ever declared definitively was the Tridentine Rite.
How would you even figure out this argument? Who made this
I
argument?
didn't. So I went down this hole because I had this argument with Eep Lord because I was taught the Vatican II documents a particular way, right? To stick to the words itself. You get what I mean? What is it saying? It's literally calling for a new rite. You get what I'm saying? And then
And
so
what
but
is Abby? What is she?
Well, no, she's Catholic, but the thing is, then she was
Yeah.
like, no, well, in my theology class, like, they're saying, no, it's the same Roman rite. And I was like, no, that's wrong. You're not using rite in the same way. Like, if you look at it, it's literally a different liturgical rite. That's what they are
Oh, so
calling.
you were
Yeah.
debating
So,
with Abby, and then she said it was the same right, and then you asked her where she got that from, and that was from Pope
right.
Benedict in 2007.
So
And
then she's
then,
right. You know what I mean?
well, if
Sh
she's right, then you better
According to
be
Benedict.
SSPX. Because
Now you get what I'm
what?
saying, right? So then I investigated further, and I was like, whoa, 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 what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, because I mean, so like I admitted to her, I was like, hey, you know what? It looks like you're right on this. Like he clarified it in Summorum Pontificum, and then I did some more research, and then I found this freaking article. You see what I mean? And it's not just this article. I found other articles along the same thing, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is actually a fucking problem with the theology itself.
Well, the
Because
SSPX would
we
just say
know
it.
so we know from a metaphysical point of view, right? If the form is different, it is not the same. Does that make sense? If the it could because it can't just be an issue
Right.
of
If the form is
material
different, it's
distinctions,
obviously not
right,
the
right,
same.
difference in material, right? If it was just a matter of, oh, it's just different in aesthetics or material, then yeah, we could retain that as the same form. But if they're literally saying it's two different forms, then they're not the same, right? Am I making sense? Like I'm
Yes,
not crazy, right?
you're not crazy. You've been asking yourself that this entire time.
Yeah.
That's a that's a good argument.
So Pope Benedict is like, oh no, it was never abrogated, so you can therefore, everybody has a right to it and all this other bullshit. But he's fucking contradicting himself when he's trying to refer to
When
it
you say
as the
it's
same right.
different forms, it's calling it a different right. Oh,
So he's right,
yeah.
quote unquote. He's right in the sense that yes, it was never abrogated, but he's wrong in the sense that it's two forms of the same fucking right.
He's definitely wrong on that. Okay.
But it's out
So,
there. The Pope wasn't able to interpret the council correctly. Now so the fucking chain of custody and magisterial interpretation is fucked on the liturgy. Now you see.
oh, the papacy
So the
failed to interpret what Vatican II is trying to express, and it went like the chain of kind of interpretation just
yeah,
failed.
yep.
Huh. Huh. Good argument. But this is the arguments that SSPX make, right?
I'm not as familiar with theirs. All I know about their argument is that yeah, I guess you could say it's similar. What
Huh.
they've been arguing is that the council was in error because you can't make a new rite and it not to be the Roman rite. So yeah, they are kind of making the same fundamental argument.
Interesting. I've never seen I've never seen an RC bring this up ever. Let alone the
I'm glad I woke up in time to hear this one.
that is such a mind-boggling yet very sim. It's like hard to get at first, but when you get it, it's like very simple. What your argument is, huh? Well, the Vatican II sect, right? I'm just kidding. So it seems like someone's got to become an SSPX or a seed, bro. Kind of sounds like that.
No, man, he's gonna wait it out.
Okay, this is the problem, all right? So here's the crux of theirs. Dogma, right? Church sees divine. Everybody knows this. Other definitive teachings. These are teachings that must be definitively held. Both this dogma and are considered infallible teachings. So this is shit that comes from the ecumenical council. Okay. Non-definitive authoritative teachings. These are doctrines that aren't infallibly defined, as we have said in an earlier blog. Elements of these teachings may change over time, but they are still authoritatively taught by the church and require religious assent of intellect and will. This is Vatican II documents. The SSPX has no issue with the first two categories, but it rejects the third. This is odd since many of the pre-Vatican II popes the SSPX admires also taught that non-definitive doctrines authoritatively taught by the pope must be accepted by Catholics. That's why for people like Brother Peter Diamond, they're not on good terms with the SSPX either. That's why for the Sedevacantists, they're like the SSPX are also wrong. Because they keep pointing to places where prior to Vatican II, it's same with the Eastern Orthodox. You guys do this too, right? You guys argue that, oh no, you guys are trapped in this catch 22 where you literally have to take everything that the Pope says, even if it's non-magisterial teaching, as part of the infallible office character of the Pope.
Well, that's not an argument that I make, but
Okay, okay. The Diorites too.
yeah. So SSPX gives into the arguments.
Hmm?
So SSPX gives into like the diorite arguments would apply to them.
I don't know. I've never heard their defense of it.
Okay, so what is your conclusion from realizing this?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some more reading now.
What if the reading doesn't come back so good?
um, my position would still remain that the Novus Ordo is still a valid right because it's still within the jurisdiction of the church, but it would be a form of weaponized ambiguity to maintain that it's still the Roman right.
Hmm.
I don't think that's a good way to
I know
try
it seems like
and
a cop. I get it, dude.
seems like a cop out.
Yeah, and for me, I've already like expressed my view, right? That when a council does not definitively declare anything as infallible or define anything, then it should be rather considered to be non-magisterial teaching. Because it's not outside the possibility for an ecumenical council to be called and not definitively declared, any defined new dogma or doctrine or anything like that. It doesn't have to. It's just in history we've never had an ecumenical council for any other purpose apart from that. You get what I mean? But when it claims, yeah, so you would have to interpret and maintain that when Pope Paul was saying they made it that there was no infallible declaration made, we have to take his word for it and treat it as if it's just non-magisterial teaching and it could be fallible.
Abysmal, what is your opinion
You
on
would no
black
longer. You
like
would
charge it.
you would no longer be able to maintain. Hold on. This is what I think. You would no longer be able to maintain.
We was kings.
You would no longer be able to maintain that the Vatican II documents in any way had any sort of infallible character to them, even if they were ratified by the Pope.
So if an EO were to come to you with this argument, how would you respond?
The Novus Ordo is a valid rite. We just can't call it the Roman Rite. It's something new.
Yeah, but there's a contradiction between popes though.
Well, I mean, I understand that, right? So this is a separate issue. That's why I was like prefacing. This is a separate issue from papal supremacy at this point.
Right, like it's an issue within the papal chain of interpretation
But it
of
would
the
be
Vatican.
fair. It would
But
it
there,
would be fair for an
mhm.
EO to criticize, right? Well, how are you able to maintain papal infallibility then? Well, now the way I maintain it is just by saying, well, we have to treat the Vatican II as infallible documents or non-infallible documents, non-magisterial teaching.
Ah,
Yeah.
but that contradicts like so
It
many different.
it doesn't contradict what an ecumenical council is. It's just historically we've never had an ecumenical council that wasn't infallible, right?
Right, but do you understand where I'm getting at here? When you're saying Vatican II is non-magisterial,
Yeah.
a lot of RCs will reject that.
Yep. Yep. But that's the position that I've always maintained consistently, even through this Discord.
But
You know,
how can you
that's
be
why people like
Catholic and do
Irish.
that?
What's that?
How can you be Catholic and do that?
That's the thing because it's non-infallible teaching. This would this Summorum Pontificum and the contradiction with it actually supports my position.
Is
It's
Lumen
allowing me
Gentium
it
magisterial?
allows me to maintain that hey, the Pope is still a heretic. The Pope can be a formal heretic. You can have a formal heretic, within the office, also be still a valid Pope.
Whoa, whoa,
And
whoa. So there can be
because
a,
the church doesn't have a normative protocol for what happens if you have a Pope who's a
but
manifest heretic.
Catholics always tell me that a pope that becomes a formal heretic was never a pope, they were an
No,
anti-papa.
so people like Saint Robert Bellarmine have written speculatively what they think it would mean, but the church has never definitively declared this at all. That's why if you look at Peter Diamond's videos, like he just starts quoting Saint Robert Bellarmine and just says, "Oh, well, if the saint and doctor of the church said it, then it must go." But the magisterium hasn't decided on it yet. I know it seems like a loophole, but for all intents and purposes, it's still coherent.
Interesting.
Like for me, what Saint Robert Bellarmine matters less than the historical case of Pope Honorius. And it was
Right,
Pope
but
Honorius that led St. Robert Bellarmine to ask these questions in the first place. St. Robert Bellarmine held the view, personal opinion, that if a pope was a manifest heretic, how we're to interpret that and what that means is that he lost his office at the moment he became a manifest heretic.
oh,
So
dude,
that's
that's
how he
so.
explains how the pope after Honorius completely, what you call abrogated all of his actions.
Yeah, it's because only a pope can only
Now you get
abrogate
it.
another pope's actions. I
Now
get
you
it,
get it.
but that's stupid because all of the Eastern patriarchs ended the council that condemned Honorius without papal legates there.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
No.
Yep. They closed it with only Constantinople and the Eastern patriarchs condemning his ass. Didn't have time for that. Interesting. That is very interesting. See, that's my issue though. That's you see why I have an issue with like RC though, right? Like that's you have to go through so many arguments not to have
Yeah.
like a
No, I'm
papal
very
chain.
aware. Yep.
That's very confusing.
It is. It's ambiguous. Vatican II fucked everything up. And it wasn't because of ecumenism. It wasn't because of religious freedom issues. It was because of this. It was because of the liturgy. So Archbishop Lefebvre was right at the end of the day.
What did Archbishop Lefebvre say?
He's the founder of the SSPX.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're not gonna be SSPX though.
Hmm? Probably
Not
not.
gonna, probably not. Why is that?
Because for me, the Novus Ordo Missale is still a valid form. It's just not the same rite.
Hmm.
So I have to admit that it's not the Roman rite.
You don't practice Roman Rite. Vatican II is not infallible. Your Vatican II church was wrong.
So at the end of the day, I have to go down with the boat in Vatican II.
Does it like the Pope, like Pope Francis claims you have to hold to it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. The problem with Summorum Pontificum is that now I have to go down with the boat in Vatican II in spite of the popes now. Both Pope Benedict or Pope Francis at this point.
So what's the point of the Pope if you're not gonna follow them, bro? That's so
Yeah, it's a real conundrum.
like what's the no no no, I'm asking you the question. What's the point of the popes
Well,
if they're
on this
not there?
particular issue, right? But yeah, I mean, on one issue, then all the issues. Like, for all intents and purposes, Vatican II is still like, I mean, there's still fucking a lot of ambiguity with it. And yeah, if it's non-infallible in if I have to maintain that it's non-infallible character, and then I'm saying that I have to go down with the boat with Vatican II. You see what I mean? At only only in respect that it affirms prior infallible teachings. You see what I
But
mean?
your most
I'm
recent
still
popes claim that it's dogmatic.
but I'm still following the magisterium of the church. And papal infallibility, right? The papal infallibility is defined, right? Not It's defined with the magisterium and not apart from it. That's the thing.
I understand that, but you're still your conscience is still bound to what the Pope pronounces when it comes to the faith while he's alive.
No, it doesn't. Not on non magisterial teachings. So it becomes right. I understand. It becomes like this thing where you have to get into the weeds and you say, "Oh, this is not magisterial teaching, and why?" You know what I mean? This is magisterial teaching, and why? I understand that, and it sounds really autistic and shit, but that's kind of the conundrum that we're in now.
Yeah, that just seems like a whole load of issues, and they like Roman Catholics will always say, "Well, what about Russia and Greece?"
No, dude, I am not one of those. Dude, you never hear me say that. It's all like the smooth brain Catholics that are sticking to all the superficial stuff. That shit doesn't really matter as much to me because that's all political
They'll say,
bullshit.
"What about Russia and Greece?" Well, it's politics, and they're like, "Well, we we have the Pope to have the unity of the Church," and it's like, I mean, dude, there is so much nuance you have to get into to even conceive of like how to reconcile this.
So here's the epilogue, okay? So in Traditionis Custodes, um, from Pope Francis now, he's addressing the use of the Roman liturgy prior to 1969. So he's maintaining that. Okay, so he says in Article 1, the liturgical books promulgated by St. Paul VI and John Paul II in conformity with the decrees of the Vatican II are the unique expression of lex orandi of the Roman Rite. So he's maintaining that it's the same rite, Pope Francis is. And then the problem with this is though is he's saying now he's no longer going to acknowledge that a priest or the faithful have a right Right to the Trident, the old form of the Mass. That's what he's doing here. It's pretty short, so you can
Oh.
read along yourself. And then the last article is previous norms, instructions, permissions, and customs that do not conform to the provisions of the present Motu Proprio are abrogated. So he's gonna maintain Pope Benedict. He's gonna maintain the same contradiction. It's just that what is abrogated is the entitlement to
So why do
the
most
prior.
Catholics hold it it's dogma, Vatican II?
Because that's the fucking circularity of this, man. They fucking tried to get away with it. Like they're a bunch of weasels. They tried to say that, oh, because it confirms prior magisterial infallible teachings, you see what I mean? It tries to use as the rule of inference
So,
prior
like, let's say an
infallible
Eastern
teachings.
Orthodox were
So
to
if
give an
it's
argument for why it's magisterial, what would that mean?
I'm sorry, say that. If an Eastern
Let's say,
Oh,
supposedly, in Eastern Orthodox were to provide an argument that it is magisterial, which you can't deny, but by how we define what is magisterial, right? And it meets that definition. What would that imply for you? It'd be a big conundrum, wouldn't it?
yeah. I would again, my position would be I have to maintain that it is non-magisterial teaching.
But let's say it is. Let's say supposedly that we were to make an argument for why it is, right? And that argument were to follow through. What would that imply? That would imply the whole conundrum again.
Yeah.
And that would just, sorry, but kind of destroy RC.
Yep.
Unless you like SSPX or something.
That is a very fair point, sir.
Huh. Well, I better start looking into arguments for why it's magisterial. That'd be funny as shit.
You're not gonna find it. They've already tried.
Like, imagine making an
They've
argument.
already tried to say it's 100% infallible magisterial teaching. I can find it for you right now. Okay? I'll find it for you right now.
Imagine making an argument for why it's not magisterial, following from the argument that you made, but then an argument that follows through on why it's magisterial.
Here it
What would that
is.
mean for the papacy?
Here it is, okay? The question is, was Vatican II merely pastoral? And guess who's talking about it? Michael Lofton.
Michael Lofton. You watching Reason and Theology,
Yeah,
schismatic.
the most smooth brain, right, of the whatchamacallit, mainstream Catholic apologetics, right?
Pop Catholic apologetics. You know he has a church in his house, right?
Hmm?
Michael Lofton, he has a church in his house.
That's so cringe, man.
You want to see it?
No, it'll make me
No.
throw up.
It's
No, man,
so
I do
funny.
not want to picture. I don't want to picture a worship space in the same vicinity of Michael Lofton farts. Okay,
It's not even like a worship space. It's his fucking house.
so cringe. The only time where I think it's okay to have like a worship space in a house like that, like in a personal house, is if it's the priest's house or rectory. That's it.
Right, but you know the canon law says you're not allowed to build a church in your house, right?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes, and he has a Byzantine church that he built in his garage. And he's not even a priest. And he has an altar in there. And he has like pews and bro, it is one of the most schizo shit I've ever seen ever. Ever. Is he cooked? Yeah.
So here's Bishop Barron's Vatican II
Oh.
FAQ, okay?
I see.
Did the Vatican II define any new dogmas or condemn any heresies? No, Vatican II, unlike many other ecumenical councils, Vatican II did not in any extraordinary way define new dogmas of the Church or condemn any heresies. But it is not unique in this respect. In fact, three ecumenical councils, Lateran, Second, Third, were disciplinary councils. Not only did these ecumenical councils not define any new dogmas, they did not address matters of doctrine at all. So there's actually precedent. Okay, I didn't know this. Was Vatican II merely a pastoral council? No. While the council did not define any new dogmas, and while its aims were largely pastoral, Vatican II also reaffirmed dogmas of the faith and developed key doctrines. In other words, the council's substance, as the names of its four constitutions make clear, are not merely dealing with pastoral matters. Are Vatican II's teachings infallible, binding, or fallible and optional? This is a false dilemma. First, as stated in question 3, Vatican II does affirm infallible dogmas of the faith. These affirmations require assent to the faith on part of Catholics. But even when they are not affirming infallible dogma, so in the case that they're not even affirming infallible dogma, the Second Vatican Council presents the teachings of the ordinary and universal magisterium through an ecumenical council of the Church. This means that these teachings are assisted by the Holy Spirit, are promulgated by the Pope in communion with the authentic teachers of the apostolic faith endowed with the authority of Christ, and require religious assent, which though distinct from the assent of faith, is nonetheless an extension of it. In short, the teachings are guarded from doctrinal error and are binding on all Catholics. They are not optional. So this is the response. Now, here's the thing. I have to disagree with Bishop Barron now. They are optional because the chain of custody and interpretation is contradictory. Summorum Pontificum contradicts the interpretation of the documents of Vatican II itself. Simple as that. Show me how you can philosophically or systematically maintain they're the same freaking Roman Rite and also two forms at the same time. You can't. Pope Francis is cleverly trying to reify or like reframe, right? When he says that it's a unique expression of the lex orandi, right? He's not using that as two. He's not using so he doesn't use the same distinction that Pope Benedict does in Summorum Pontificum to say that it's just a different form. He's saying it's a unique expression. So you can't maintain Bishop Barron type answers anymore. Are you still there?
Yeah, and I'm listening. Just trying to put this through my mind a little bit.
I'll read it again. Even when they are not affirming infallible dogma, the Second Vatican Council presents the teachings of the ordinary and universal magisterium through an ecumenical council of the Church. So he's trying to say that because it's an ecumenical council, it has character of infallibility or binding in that way. This is wrong. Even if it's an ecumenical council, it can be an ecumenical council with non-magisterial teachings. So he's contradicting himself. Because he literally gave the example. Did it, in answering, did it define or condemn any new heresies? No, it didn't. Here are some examples of councils that didn't do that, and they were just disciplinary actions. Those are non-magisterial, teachings.
This is a good argument for Orthodox, right? So they'll have to reconcile with Vatican II being infallible and magisterial because it's an ecumenical council. But at the same time, the chain of narration contradicts each other. The chain of interpretation of the popes contradict each other on whether it's like, he contradicts himself in his own statement, right? In 2007. That is so silly. That is so funny.
Say that one more time. What was the last?
That is so funny, is what I said.
No, before that.
I said these Vatican II RCs would have to reconcile of how they view Vatican II as magisterial,
Right.
right?
That's my
And
argument.
infallible, while also trying to reconcile the fact that the chain of interpretation from the popes contradicts themselves.
Right. You can't. You have to give up one or the other.
Ha! Oh, beautiful argument. So beautiful.
So here's the next thing, okay? I'm still on Bishop Barron's FAQ, okay? Did Pope Paul VI say that Vatican II was ordinary, pastoral, and fallible? On January 12, 1966, Pope Paul VI said in audience, given the council's pastoral character, it avoided pronouncing in an extraordinary manner dogmas endowed with a note of infallibility. This quote has often been used to suggest that the council's teachings and decrees are not binding on Catholics. However, as Dr. Jeff Mirus has explained, all this is really saying is what is described in the previous three questions, that Vatican II, while largely pastoral in nature, did not in any extraordinary way, invoking infallibility, define new dogmas. Pope Paul VI was not saying that Vatican II is merely pastoral, subject to doctrinal error, or not binding. On the contrary, in the very next sentence he adds, but it, the Council, has invested its teachings with the authority of the Supreme Ordinary Magisterium, which Ordinary Magisterium is so obviously
Oh, so the argument from
authentic
the
that it must be.
SSPX is that they don't have to hold a Vatican II, but the Pope is forcing them to.
I get it, yeah. But if the Pope contradicts himself literally on the issue that they have a problem with, then who's wrong? Who's right? It's gonna be the chain of custody of the magisterium that existed prior to the fucking idiot heretical Pope. End of story. You get what I mean?
I get it. That's a beautiful fucking argument.
So basically, Pope John Paul II, heretic. Pope Benedict XVI, heretic. Pope Francis, heretic. And it's not about the ecumenism shit. It's about this. It's about the liturgical form. The liturgical rite, excuse me. You
Would you
get
see
it?
they're heretical in claiming that it's
The
universally
same
binding?
rite. No, that it's the same rite. And that to hold that it is the same rite is universally binding. That's the heresy.
Mm,
You can't do that. You have to acknowledge, if you want to be consistent with Vatican II taught, then it has to be a different rite.
right.
So all this Bishop Barron like clarification on these is just all fucking cope. Like, let me just finish this, okay? So on the contrary, in the next sentence he adds, but the council has invested its teaching with the authority of the supreme ordinary magisterium, which ordinary magisterium is so obviously authentic, that it must be accepted with, quote, docility and sincerity by all the faithful, according to the mind of the council as expressed in nature and the aims of the individual documents. Here's the thing: docility and sincerity, okay? But it doesn't say you have to assent with your intellect. So this is like clever casuistry at this point. So he's trying to say that because Pope Paul says docility and sincerity, that it is binding in that way. And so technically it is binding. But it's not binding in an infallible way, because if it doesn't require your assent of your intellect, then it means it's not infallible. Does that make sense?
But if it's
It has to
binding in a
bind your
non-infallible
intellect.
way, if it's binding in a non-infallible way, then that still posits an issue, dude.
No, precisely, and that's the kind of contradiction that even Bishop Barron is in right now. The point of the supreme, magisterial authority is that it's it, it can only be infallible. It can't be an infallible ordinary magisterial binding. The only thing that is binding is its infallible character.
Do you understand how you, as a Roman Catholic, will get the implications from the Pope being able to teach formal heresy? Do you know the what that leads to? Because it's actually dogmatized that the Pope can't fall into formal heresy. You know that, right?
I mean, he can't He can't bind the faithful to formal heresy.
But
So it's going to be in that limited context again of
wait,
Vatican I.
1 second, 1 second.
So you would have to find a way in which this particular issue on the Roman Rite
Do you? No,
is
no, no,
being
no. Stop,
enforced
stop,
as
stop,
binding.
stop. You understand that the Pope, it's said in the canons explicitly that he cannot fall into formal heresy, right? So you're contradicting your own canons.
Not yet.
Yes,
There
because you
has
said that
not
the
been
Pope
an
Francis,
instance.
you said Pope Francis, heretic, right? He formally taught this. He wrote documents for the faithful to read on these disputes that you call him a heretic for saying that it's the same rite. I don't think you understand the implications. The reason why these, like Michael Laufton, likes the papal lawyer, is because your canons say the Pope can't fall into formal heresy.
That's the thing. He can only teach something as binding if it has the character of
No,
infallibility.
no,
That's the
that
problem.
doesn't. That's not true.
So,
That's not
no,
true.
right. You're going to want to maintain that as an Eastern Orthodox, and that's the J. Dyer position. It is. But if we go to the canon of Vatican I, at the end of the day, it's very limited on faith and morals, ex cathedra with the church. There's three
That's
components to it.
infallible. That's
That's
infallible.
three
But that's
components.
different.
That's
That's
three
different.
components.
That's different than
A
dogma.
motu proprio is
See,
not at that same level of
as I
infallibility. It
said,
just simply isn't.
as stop interrupting, man.
The
As I said,
only two right declarations are Immaculate Conception and
abysmo, abysmo.
Assumption of Mary
I
or Donation of
understand.
Mary.
Hello, can you
That's
hear
it.
me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think you understand my argument. Your canons, and I'm not talking about whether the Pope is infallible or not, right? The Pope's teaching is infallible. I understand the formula.
Right, but
I'm talking about
you're trying to extend that infallibility to all
no,
magisterial or
no. I'm
non-magisterial
trying to
teachings.
no. I'm saying it's binding. You're bound to it. You're bound to a contradictory notion.
Of what?
Okay. So you just listed the different contradictions, right? Okay. Okay, let me help you understand. You said Pope Francis is a heretic because he is teaching publicly
He
towards the
maintains. Go,
faithful,
sorry, go ahead.
he is publicly teaching
Hmm.
heresy that there is the same right. Okay,
But in a non-binding way.
that
That's the
doesn't
thing.
matter. That
It does
doesn't
matter.
matter.
It does
No.
matter. It does
Okay.
matter because
Does the canons?
papal teaching can only be binding if it's infallible in
That's
character.
not true. That's not
That's
true.
no. You're
That's not
gonna
true.
argue. Okay, well then you don't understand papal infallibility, and it's as simple as that. That's the
Bro,
thing.
there can be something you're bound
There's a
to, but it
difference
not
if you
be
want
ex
to maintain.
cathedra.
There's a
Okay,
difference if
are
you want to
you?
maintain like Bishop Barron here wants to do
Let me ask
that.
you.
It's
Are you
because of
only?
the infallible character of the ecumenical council itself and the supreme ordinary magisterium
Are
that
you
they are infallible.
only? Are
That's not.
you?
That's
Can you
also not
stop?
true.
Stop interrupting. Are you bound to only ex cathedra statements?
I wouldn't say no. There's a distinction between what kind of binding is it, right? Is it or do you have to assent? So the right way of talking about it is does one have to assent, right? With uh docility, with will, with the intellect,
Sounds like
or
cope.
both? No, it's not cope at all. Like that's so
The canons
when it
clearly
comes, no,
say
no, no,
the Pope can't teach formal
hold on,
heresy.
don't cut in. When it comes to the dogmas of the faith, right, like the deposit of faith itself, it requires both assent of intellect or will. So whether you don't feel like it, you have to assent. Whether you don't think that it's right because of your own intellectual deficiencies or your ignorance, you still have to accept it. That
Okay.
is the infallible character of the dogma, right?
The
But when it comes to other magisterial teachings, yes, they are binding, but not in the same infallible way as a
I
dogma.
know they're not. I know they're not binding in the same infallible way. Now, the
Yeah.
the issue is
So
is this, right? So, it is taught that even apart from ex cathedra statements and infallibly binding statements, the Pope cannot openly teach formal heresy. That is something that is taught
you need to find me that
independent.
you need to find me that
Okay,
canon. You need to find me that
I will
canon.
find it for you
And we
because it
have to
says that.
now we have to go through it accurately at this point.
Okay, yes, I
I
can
know it's
find it.
like we have to go to that level of autism, but that's what this requires.
Right, I understand that, but my issue. Okay, I'm not saying there's a canon that says the Pope can't fall into formal heresy when speaking ex cathedra. That's not what I'm saying. The Pope can't fall into formal heresy at all. At all. Let me show you.
This is the Sedevacantis position, by the way.
Right. So the common Catholic idea is that.
Where's the canon?
Yeah. I'm about to post it. The
Okay.
Catholic idea is that he can teach private heresy or material heresy only in his non-defining, non-definitive magisterium, right? But he cannot teach public or formal heresy in his defining and definitive magisterium. That is not infallible. All right, so
So what I mean formal is that okay, so when it's a material heresy, right? It could be anything like just not being a good Catholic or dancing around with transvestites, whatever's, right? Like in a liturgical setting. Those are materially heretical. But when it comes to like formal heresy, as a minister of the church, anything in the external forum, if he decides to express as a formal teaching, right? Even if it's it's non-magisterial or non-infallible, it's still a formal heresy. So my definition might be actually broader than the way that you're trying to construe what formal heresy is. That formal heresy, by definition, is one that is infallibly taught. If that's your definition of formal heresy, then to me that seems more of a nuanced and narrow definition of formal heresy than my definition of formal heresy.
by
It
formal heresy, I mean publicly teach towards
correct.
Christians,
So even
right?
if he puts a Twitter post up and it's wrong, that's formal heresy. Why? Because canonically it's within the external forum and not the internal forum. Because
But as
by
I said,
character
I
of
can
being a
find it.
minister or priest,
I'm trying
they
to
are
find
no
it.
longer a representative of themselves, they're a
I,
representative of the
as
church.
as I
That's the
said,
canonical
I'm trying to find the
tribunal.
canon for you because it
Okay.
states that the Pope can't fall into any formal heresy. You can't teach heresy on any public teaching, not just in ex cathedra statements. Uh, right here. 1 second.
Are you watching Brother Diamond's videos to try to correct me?
No, no, no. Um, Here is Eric Ibarra criticizing Vatican I for only saying that the Pope can't fall into heresy and ex cathedra statements.
This is the best you can do. Come on, man.
Yes, that's the only best I can do right now.
I mean, Brother Peter Diamond, he when you said that there's a canon, he does in one of his videos, he does bring up a canon that says something like this, because his argument is literally that papal infallibility somehow has to extend to even non-infallible teachings because like Pope Leo the
Not
Second
papal
said that or
infallibility.
something.
Not papal infallibility. Formal heresy can't be taught, and that extends to the non-defining,
No, yeah, there's
non.
no canon like that exists. That's the
And
thing.
he
That's the
cites one
like
though.
no, right, or else the church would have ended with Pope Honorius. That's the thing.
Well, the Church of Pope Honorius because we still have the East. You know what I'm saying? What
Well,
I'm
I
saying?
mean, you understand what I'm saying. Like at least chain of
I
custody
get
of
it.
Roman Catholic Church. I don't
Well, your chain of
believe
custody is
so.
already
So
fucked
so
because
so
of
so
Vatican
so
II.
far, like I'm still able to maintain some coherency, but now I have to shut the door on whether or not John Paul II, Benedict, or Francis are not formal heretics. So that's what to me sticks out the most is that because they have taught publicly that it is the same rite, they are formal heretics at that point. They are not in line with the same magisterial uh, binding of docility and sincerity
But
of
Roman
ecumenical
Catholics always tell
celibacy.
me the Pope can't fall into formal heresy. The Pope can't fall into formal heresy. They
They
always say that.
can. But they're wrong when they say shit like that. That's what I'm trying to say. That's why, like, even I argue with those type of Roman Catholics all the time because they don't understand papal infallibility. Like papal infallibility. So there's a whole nother like dimension to this. Okay, like if you just want to entertain me into a little bit, right? Which is there anything more infallible than papal infallibility as it's been defined in Vatican II? And the answer is yes, right? It's the sensus fidei, the sensus fidelum, right? So the original testimony of the Christians, of the original Christians, are 100% guaranteed. Their faith is infallible. What they testify to us as the life of Christ and the events that happen, both before and after his crucifixion and assumption and his ascension into heaven, both before and after even that, those are all infallible until the death of the last apostle. Those are more infallible than the papal infallibility. That is precisely what we mean by the deposit of faith. The Pope,
I mean, would you want to go to a church that recognizes that Novus Ordo is, or forgive me, Vatican V2 is like binding and magisterial?
Mhm. I mean, that becomes a problem for me, right? Now I'm stuck in a paradigm where I recognize that the right is valid. It's just now I'm just surrounded by a bunch of heretics. How is that any different during the Arian heresies?
Right,
They have the
but you know
places
what?
of
Wait,
worship.
but you know what
It's just
Athanasius
me
did
against the
during,
world, dude.
but you know what Athanasius did during the Arian heresies, right?
He got excommunicated.
He got excommunicated and set up a church.
Interesting. I didn't know
You
that.
know, you know who that sounds like? Sounds like the Custodes. Sounds like the SSPX.
Interesting.
Because Saint Athanasius, everybody was against him. He went in exile like 7 times, right?
Yeah. They kicked him out every single
And
time.
yeah, so he schismed from them, and it was the true church. This is why, like, true. Do you know what true Orthodox are?
What?
So there are. So you know how you have sedevacantists, right?
Hmm.
We have true Orthodox.
Yo. No, I'm very full aware. You see, here's the thing. I appreciate the Greek patriarchs more than you know. Like, and because and I'm with the church's mind on this. Like, they're all valid sacraments. Apostolic succession is all valid, right? They don't recognize the juridical and political aspect of the church. And the problem is anthropologically speaking, you can't maintain and reject that about the church. So we can just say that it's in a political category, right? It's like practical morality, right? I'm fine with that. Like if I was Pope, I would be okay with that, and I try to talk to the Eastern Patriarchs and be like, "Yo, let's just not call this like a theological disagreement anymore, because it's not a theological disagreement. If we can agree there, then we need to fucking remove our schisms to be intellectually honest. Let's just call it a political disagreement and move on." You know what I mean?
It's not gonna be that easy though. You know that, right? They
I
would never come
understand
into
that. Well, I
communion.
mean, when egos are involved, but I think everybody's kind of past that point. That's all I'm saying is that because the the thing is we're not disclaiming, even though there's a lot of tribalism among like the smooth brain Catholics, that want to like pin it on other historical fucking side quests and shit. There's actually a lot of contribution from the East that I as a Roman Catholic would want. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those theological developments have already been incorporated in Vatican II and leading up to it. They've influenced like a lot of our theologians on the reforms of Vatican II, and those particular reforms are actually good and they should be binding in some way. Right? We should be docile and serene in our acceptance of them. It's just it shouldn't be done with like an uncritical adaptation, so to speak. Like those reforms shouldn't be instituted uncritically. But that's what's happening right now, right? It's happening uncritically, which is why you're having like rainbow flag dances around the altar and stuff. And what they're doing is they're censoring dissenting voices like myself that is trying to be critical, and they just go, "No, no, no, brother. You're just a doom and gloomer." Right? I mean, maybe if I was born outside of the church, I would have more justifiable reason. You see what I mean? To be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be a Greek Orthodox and just kind of like live in my bubble away from this shit. Unfortunately, that's not my circumstance, right? I'm like stuck in this. Like, yeah,
You're stuck.
I'm stuck with on the boat with a bunch of heretics, man.
Yeah. I just feel more comfortable with EL. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I have to go down with the ship. I'm sorry. I'm that guy, dude. I'm like Captain Ahab on this.
Oh, dude.
We're gonna get the whale, dude. We're gonna get him.
Huh. You keep telling yourself that. The ecumenism will never fail.
The ecumenism will never fail, or it will fail.
I said it will never fail in your church, dude. They'll keep on doing it.
I have a theory on this. I feel like God allowed the schism to exist because he didn't want the Roman patriarchs to get too big of a freaking head.
Ah,
Because this
that's
could have went
hilarious.
down. This could have went down so long ago. You know what I mean?
It's kind of hilarious. But
Like that.
I almost became a Florinite true Orthodox Christian for a while there. I saw this like debate that this true Orthodox had with this other Orthodox guy, and it almost made me into a true Orthodox.
And
Well, I didn't become a true Orthodox, but he had some
oh yeah, you
arguments
were
for
trying to
the
talk
old.
about what a true Orthodox is. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a true Orthodox is like a set of Acontis, but Orthodox.
What?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, they separated from us because of us accepting the Gregorian calendar, mainly.
What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You know
this
what?
seems kind of like a little bit esoteric. But
Yeah, so
that's how I
Rokor.
would describe the ascetics too.
So
They're a bit
So do
esoteric.
you know the church called Rokor? Russian Orthodox Church abroad.
Nope. I'm totally ignorant of that whole
Okay.
political
Okay.
dynamic.
So Rokor was originally a church that was true Orthodox that came back into communion with mainland Russia. So mainland Russia basically wanted them to accept the new calendar, wanted them to be communist, right? And the true Orthodox, Rokor, separated from them and became tons of martyrs. Rokor came back into communion with mainland Russia in the 2000s, but some true Orthodox still remained, like the Florinite Greeks and the RTOC, the Russian True Orthodox Church, right?
Okay.
And that's the current debate that's going on right about now.
What's this debate called? Sorry.
Yeah.
Rocor.
It's not over Rocor anymore. They came back into communion, but true Orthodox. Let me show you.
The True Orthodox Church.
Yep.
Reformed Church calendar. What the fuck? This is new.
Here we go.
It's going to be excellent. Before we get
You ready?
into it, though, make sure that you like, share, subscribe. We are on the back, just because I think it would be funny. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this debate tonight. This is going to be, I can already tell. I can already tell where this is going to go, and I'm looking forward to it. Joseph Swayden, why don't you take a second before we get started? Tell everybody where they can find you, and just take a brief moment to tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Deacon Joseph Swayden. I can be found most easily at the website nftu.net. I've used it to run news stories about true orthodoxy and ecumenism since 2004. It also is being merged into our video channel. You may have noticed if you go to the Orthodox Apologetics channel, it is being branded as NFTU. We're bringing that all together for a cohesive experience. As for me, I first came to Orthodoxy in 1997. I should say is the moment where something happened, and I knew that I had to become Orthodox. And it's been quite a ride ever since. A very interesting one. I think that's about it. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got a dog, cat.
Well, I mean, it's awesome that you have a dog, but cats are ontologically evil, much like wasps. I just want to let you know that. Moving over to the resident sleeper side. Resident sleeper, take a moment, tell everybody where they can find you, just briefly a little bit about yourself. We already know.
I've debated this guy.
Do you play the accordion? We know that much.
Resident Sleeper or Andrew?
Yes, resident sleeper. So I've debated resident sleeper and an Orthodox server because he called me a uniate for holding to the formal distinction between essence and energy. So I was arguing for Scotism, and I bipped this guy so hard because he didn't know what St. Gennadius Scalarius taught, and it was hilarious.
Is it recorded?
But
No, unfortunately, it's not. Okay, I was on my phone at my girlfriend's house, and I bipped this guy. It was hilarious.
maybe you can give us a little bit more.
Hi, I'm
should start
Resident
recording
Sleeper. I'm an
I usually record my debates, but I was at my girlfriend's house on my phone, so I couldn't record it.
Okay, got it.
Orthodox layman with a background in Muslim apologetics.
Can you put it at 1.5 speed?
And I play accordion on Instagram. It's garbage. You don't have
Then basically the next step is people try preaching heresy bareheaded.
the background in Muslim.
Hopefully give you some background and some understanding. For the most part, this presentation is for the audience. It is not for my opponent. However, my opponent is free to use or learn from it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is discuss the basics. How does one handle heresy in Orthodoxy? This is something that's fairly uncontroversial, and until recently, people begin by complaining when problems show up, when people begin preaching heresy bareheaded. There are usually various interventions that take place, usually between priests versus the bishops, etc. I think we see this in things like the Arian crisis, etc. Once you're dealing with a bishop that is a known heretic, the next step is non-commemoration. I know in World Orthodoxy, the most recent case of this was during the Havana Declaration between Patriarch Kirill and Pope Francis, where a number of seminarians began non-commemoration. That's also kind of where I think a lot of the people who follow this fighting from within movement, that's where you are. Whether you realize it or not, you may be commemorating someone. If you are, though, and you're not really not commemorating, then you're just agreeing with them. Then basically the next step is people try to find bishops to reorganize the synod. And once they've done that, then the synod then can act as the Orthodox Church in a local region and declare people heretical, etc. This is Archbishop Chrysostom I of Athens, Papadopoulos. In 1923, shortly before he changed the calendar, he said, "No autocephalous Orthodox Church can separate itself from the rest and accept the new calendar without becoming schismatic in the eyes of others." A year later, he changed the calendar. The Holy Fathers from Athos and priests who descended from the innovating hierarchy served the increasing numbers of persecuted faithful during the period until Metropolitan Chrysostom of Florina and others came out of retirement and separated to convene a synod in 1935, which then condemned the calendar change. And from here, we're going to get to a discussion of a tale of two orthodoxies, if we will. In Greece, this is from a letter of Father Ephraim, who would later become Metropolitan from Afakna. He wrote, in Greece, the real power of the old calendar movement became known during the German occupation. Since the official new calendar church no longer had the support of the government because the Nazis had taken over, in persecuting the old calendarists, many had died in prison from starvation or ill treatment, the old calendarists spread like wildfire. In Athens alone, they had 500 tiny chapels and churches, with a priest for every one of them. After the war and return of the government, the persecution was resumed, and the movement again slackened. So during the time of Hitler, the true Orthodox...
Look at that me.
Meanwhile, we celebrate
Give me the names of the Jews that live here. Fuck you. Here's my name.
people who didn't help Christians. Then we get to part 2 here. Basically, this is on the left is a book review. I'm not going to read the whole thing, although they get it wrong. Mother Maria Skotsova actually died of dysentery, not of the gas chambers. They did that to promote her cultus as a saint. Further, what you'll know, this is about the Paris school, which, hate to bring it up, but Hitler and the Nazis were suspicious that they were Freemasonic liberals. Strangely, Roquefort was also suspicious that they were Freemasonic liberals, mostly because they were Freemasonic liberals. And as you'll notice, the guys on the right who came from the Paris school are well-known authors in your community because they all ended up leading St. Vladimir Seminary's teachings. And Meyrendorf, Schmemann, Lasky, all from the Paris school. So we continue. Romania is just crazy. I mean, you have Miron Cristeu, and that's just a huge mess. As you'll notice these pictures here on the right, that's an entire village getting arrested for holding to the old calendar. I should mention Patriarch Miron actually wanted to introduce the papal calendar and attempted to, and they were arresting everyone who disagreed, but there's even a point where communists supported the king. So it was a crazy time, but the point is there were a lot of people being arrested for doing the right thing. Finally, Russia. Self-explanatory. Fun fact, if you are over the age of 23, you've been alive longer than the Patriarchate of Moscow has been commemorating the new martyrs. The guy on the right, Patriarch Alexis, literally was brought into existence in his offices and as Patriarch simply because of the fact that they needed to fight the Nazis. The guy on the left, St. Joseph of Petrograd, is my namesake and still not on the calendar of the Moscow Patriarchate because he led the Catacomb Church. Well, what do Orthodox Christians do when dealing with heretical hierarchs? They basically, as the canon notes above, they sever themselves from communion with their president because he publicly preaches heresy and with bared head teaches it in the church. Such persons are to be accounted not to canonical penalty, but deemed worthy of honor for not bishops, but false bishops and false teachers have they condemned, and not fragmented the church's unity with schism.
But this canon freaking cooked me for about 3 months. Until I had this canon says
of the first second council.
False bishops and false teachers, right? We need to secede from communion with that person. We need to
so
it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it was false bishops and false teachers have they condemned, and they have not fragmented the church's unity with schism, but from schisms and divisions they have earnestly sought to deliver the church. So he's saying that you're preserving the church by schisming from the heretical bishop. Right? And that, it's that fucked me.
Yeah. I mean, this would make sense, right? Generally speaking. Unfortunately, for a Roman Catholic, I can't. So no matter what, I have to submit to the Pope in virtue of, Vatican I, and there's kind of like an inversion process that would happen in the Orthodox context. It makes sense, and I'm totally in agreement with that. But after Vatican I, I'm basically bound to the Pope in that way, in the sense of his office, even in spite of a heretical Pope. So, if anything, if this Pope continues teaching formal heresy and claiming that he can bind me to it, I can submit to his office while retaining my own intellectual integrity. And
let me ask you a question.
Perhaps not the whole of my will, but
right.
if de facto the Pope is teaching formal heresy, like the Bible says, he's dousing his own head with the hot coals of
So
hell.
let me basically
that would be my way of getting
let me ask
my
you
vindication.
let me ask you a question that just
the more he abuses the faithful, the more he goes to hell. Basically,
let me ask you a question. Right. So this is from this is kind of Joseph Swayden's polemic. Okay. In your mass, okay, the church you go to, It commemorates Francis, right?
Yeah. Of course, he's part of the litany, right?
Now let me ask a question.
Or I mean,
Would you
excuse me,
go?
not litany, the
One second.
prayers
One,
of the.
one second.
He's mentioned in the freaking Eucharistic
Yes. Yes.
liturgy.
Would you go to a church that commemorates Arius?
No, I wouldn't. But Arius wasn't the pope.
Okay, but one second. That doesn't. Here's the thing, though. Would you commemorate someone that is a known heretic?
So here's the thing. The problem
Mm-hmm.
becomes, right? In many senses, we're all like in the broadest sense of heresy, we're all heretics, right? And then
That's
there's
not.
going to be
That's not
different
true.
levels of like, how
That's
manifested
not
that
true.
is.
That's
No,
not
that is
true.
true. That is true. We're
The
all
saints.
material
Okay,
heretics.
I can give a.
We're
That's
all
not.
material
But not
heretics, man.
formal. But not formal. But not
Okay,
formal.
right. So when
So.
it comes to the formal dimension of the church, though, right, like the formal dimension of heresy within the church by its own pastors and stuff, when it comes to the office of the Pope himself, right, it doesn't violate the office. That's what I'm maintaining, to have a heretical individual who holds the
Hmm.
office. So,
But you understand
right,
when you
but
commemorate
I don't
when you
have to
commemorate the.
listen to
Mhm.
things that he says is
That
binding
doesn't. That's
in a
not what I'm saying.
particular way
That's not what I'm saying.
if they both by de
Uh
jure
huh.
and de facto are not. So that's what
Okay.
Vatican I allows us to do, is as faithful we can
Can
delineate what is de
can
jure versus
you
de facto.
commemorate? Can you commemorate a heretic?
We're not commemorating him.
Yes, you are. In
No,
the mass, yes, in the mass, he's mentioned in the litany, right?
no,
Before you
not in the
present the
litany, not in the litany. Hold on.
before you present the
Well,
Eucharist,
well,
he
well.
is mentioned.
He can be part of the prayers of the faithful, so you can include the Pope's own intentions.
Okay, do
Then,
you know what it means to commemorate somebody?
uh, to celebrate them.
That's one thing, but it's also to be in communion with them, right? So,
I don't know about that.
yes, when you're in
That's kind
communion
of
with
broad.
somebody, when you're in communion with somebody, right? So the church you go to, for example, is in communion with a
No, it just
known
means
formal heretic.
celebrate. So I'm right. It's celebrate or show respect for. It doesn't
I
necessarily imply
One
communion,
second,
but you
stop,
can
stop.
construe it that way.
When
Just
you,
so that's
okay,
what we're
so when
looking
you're in
for. It's not the
communion, you
same
are
connotation.
commemorate. When you are
It's not
when
even
you're
a
in
similar.
communion, you are commemorating him. Yes, you are.
Yes.
Would you
Well, I
take
mean,
communion at
hold
his
on.
church?
Yeah, of
Would
course.
you?
There's respect for the Pope. That's just the way it is.
Okay, so you take communion from a heretic, a formal heretic.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not
You
taking
see, that's an
communion.
issue.
No. I'm taking communion in virtue of the office that he holds.
Okay, wait. The
That's
issue
the
is
distinction that
the
you're not getting,
but
right?
the issue, but the
It's
issue is
so
the
hold on.
issue
Being a
is.
pope is not a change in ontological
Oh my
character.
gosh.
Does that make sense?
Okay, you're
It's
not
just an
understanding the argument.
office.
You're not understanding it. So when
No, it's well, you're right. But in the case of in the case, right, of you have the holder of an office, right? That individual can be formally heretical, but the character of the office remains, and that's what one is bound and beholden to, is the seat itself. So when the individual speaks from, it's literally in Vatican I. That's the definition of papal infallibility. It has to be from the seat of Peter. It's the seat that holds primacy, or excuse me, universal jurisdiction, because it's in virtue of the seat itself, or the see of Peter, in which even in the First Ecumenical Council, the jurisdiction of all the other metropolitan. No, it's not avoiding the argument. You can claim that all you want, but it's logically coherent. At the end of the day, it's logically coherent. It's pretty airtight. That's why the thing is I'm making this in Boethius. You're trying to like fish for like certain technicality that I might not be aware of, in the sense that like I'm already aware of certain implications that this leads to because I've been pretty consistent, maintaining that yeah, the Pope can be heretic in these kind of ways. Does it necessitate that I break communion with the office of Peter? No. In fact, I have to. I'm more attached to it, right? The issue is this though, right? What does it mean to be a formal heretic, right? What it means is that you're teaching something that is materially erroneous. Does that make sense? So I can so here's the thing, where I can disagree. No, so it's an intellectual dispute is what it is. It's not a matter of practice. No, it doesn't apply. So just because the logic works in one category does not apply to another category. So this was are you familiar with the Donatist controversy? So even sacraments are valid, right? From a heretical or apostate priest. In virtue of what? In virtue of what? In virtue of what though is it? The jurisdiction of the church. The indelible character of the priest, right, which is the ontological change of the priest, right, allows, right, that's what allows for the jurisdiction of the church to guarantee the efficacy of the sacrament regardless of the character of the priest. Oh, I see. You can equivocate on the meaning of communion and it would be okay to not be in communion in one way than to be sacramentally in communion. That's totally different. So jurisdictionally, you can't, you remove yourself from communion, but like person to person, like, am I ever gonna like have a beer with Pope Francis? No, I think he's a moron, and that's as simple as that. All right, man. No, dude, but no, this was a good conversation, man. Especially the no, no, no. That's why, like, I appreciate you because I was able to clarify that with you. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I'm not gonna make any bones about, like what the implications it has on Catholics. It is what it is. You know what I mean? So, all right, man. You have a good one. We'll talk later.